One of the things I was super curious about, because I was actually there last week, is this place.
Giza.
Pyramids of Giza.
The Great Pyramid of Giza. Here we look at it. Attributed to the pharaoh Khufu, who was a pharaoh of the 4th dynasty.
What is the mystery here? So again, pyramids are this big stack of like concrete blocks in Egypt. Why is it so mysterious?
Well, first of all, they're not concrete. They're hewn limestone and granite. First of all, it's mysterious for the sheer size of it. Look, so you've got roughly 750 feet along each side, okay? And they vary in length by only fractions of an inch. They've got it just about spot on exact on the side length. And you want that in a pyramid, because if you get it wrong, you're going to end up with a corkscrew rather than a pyramid. If you get it wrong at the bottom, those errors are going to magnify and they're going to get worse and worse, and it's not going to be a pyramid at the end of the day. Secondly, weight calculated at about 6 million tons, more than 2 million individual blocks of stone. I've climbed the pyramid 5 times. Once I climbed it when there was an event taking place on the Giza Plateau, picnics basically, and a lot of Cairenes just decided to climb the pyramid. As I say, I've climbed it 4 other times without other people there, but this time there were hundreds of people on the pyramid. That's when I realized how difficult this thing is to make, because the biggest danger was the other people. Once you're up 2 or 3 courses, you fall, you're dead. It's a 52-degree slope. There's no way you're going to stop. You're going to come down, and still every year people die on the Great Pyramid. That's why they've made it illegal to climb it now. So there's that. Then there's the almost perfect alignment of the Great Pyramid to true north, not to compass north, which is about 10 or 11 degrees off true north, but to astronomical north, real north. The Great Pyramid is aligned within 3/60ths of a single degree. I put it that way because degrees are divided into 60 minutes, so 3 minutes of arc. The Great Pyramid is aligned to that level of precision, 3/60ths of a single degree to true north. And they've done that on a 6 million ton monument, which is 481 feet high, if you take account of its original height, which has a 52-degree slope, which is filled with internal corridors and spaces, grand gallery, the ascending, the descending corridors. All of this is extremely difficult to do. It's not impossible to do because we see it there. Could our civilization do it? Yeah, I think we could. But would we do it? No, I don't think we would. The motive wouldn't be there. People say, why? I mean, why do you want to align it perfectly to true north? It's enough to ask me to build a 6 million ton monument, but you want it aligned to true north as well? Come on. I mean, that's a really difficult specification. We'd find that hard. A kind of artistry was put to work on the Great Pyramid as well as skill. Let's get rid of any notion that slaves were involved. They were not. There wasn't slavery in the Old Kingdom anyway, but this is a work of love from the first to the last stone. It's a work done with great skill and care. It's a beautiful and extraordinary thing, both inside and out. It sits almost exactly on latitude 30, which is 1/3 of the way between the North Pole and the equator. And it incorporates the dimensions of the Earth on a scale of 1 to 43,200 in its own dimensions. So if you take the height of the Great Pyramid and multiply it by 43,200, I'll explain why that number matters. Multiply it by that number, you get the polar radius of the Earth. Measure the base perimeter of the Great Pyramid, multiply it by the same factor, 43,200, and you get the equatorial circumference of the Earth. Archaeologists know this. They say it's a coincidence, total coincidence, just by chance. However, I could agree with them, actually, if the scale was not 1 to 43,200. But the fact that it's 1 to 43,200 changes everything, because that belongs to a sequence of numbers that is found in ancient mythology all around the world. And those numbers are all multiples of the number 72. And I mentioned at the beginning of our discussion the book by the great historian of science, Giorgio de Santillana, professor of the history of science at MIT. He was the first to identify that these numbers and the imagery that go with them derive from a phenomenon called the precession of the equinoxes. I better explain that a little bit. The precession of the equinoxes. Everybody's heard the song, "We live in the dawning of the age of Aquarius." I'm sure you've heard that.
No comment.
We live in the dawning of the age of Aquarius. That's astrology. At the moment, and for the last 2,000 years, on the spring equinox, the sun has risen against the background of the constellation of Pisces. That's the age of Pisces. We live in the age of Pisces. It's not an accident that the early Christians used the fish as their symbol. The next constellation on the zodiac, when you go backwards around it, is Aquarius. And the precession is actually caused by a wobble on the axis of the Earth. I'm going to pretend that this is the Earth.
Okay.
And instead of just doing this, while it's doing that, it's also doing that. It's wobbling. And that affects the rising time and season at which particular stars rise. It affects two things noticeably. One thing it affects is the pole star. At the moment, the pole star is Polaris. The pole star, this is astronomical north. It's the star towards which the extended north pole of the Earth points most directly.
Okay.
At present, it's Polaris. It hasn't always been Polaris. 4,000 years ago, it was Thuban in the constellation of Draco. That's because the Earth's axis is doing this. At the horizon, it does the same thing with the zodiacal constellations. We shift gradually through each constellation, lasts about 2,000 years in each constellation. The great year where we come back to square one is just under 26,000 years. 25,920 years is the convention that's applied in ancient mythology. So the fact that one of those numbers is the scale used to encode the dimensions of the Earth in the Great Pyramid cannot be accidental, in my view. It's a deliberate choice. If it was 1 to 57,000, I wouldn't pay attention to it. If it was 1 to 21,000, I wouldn't pay attention to it. But 1 to 43,200, that's the number of syllables in the Rig Veda, for example. You find this all over the world, everywhere.
So what does that imply or suggest?
What it suggests is that incorporated into the building of the Great Pyramid was knowledge that was not supposed to have existed 4,500 years ago. In fact, knowledge that was not supposed to have existed until 2,000 years ago. Hipparchus of Alexandria is the Greek who was supposed to have discovered precession, but the incorporation of precession in the structure of the Great Pyramid says to me that that knowledge is much older. It was already old then.
I really want to make sure I'm clear on this precession thing because I'm not super clear.
Yeah.
What does it mean, precession? It means that there's a certain star pattern that we see once every 20,000 years?
It precesses, it goes backwards.
Okay.
The direction through the zodiac is forwards in the normal year, but in the long-term year, because of the wobble, the sun rises against the background of the spring equinox. The sun rises perfectly due east. It always does. It also rises perfectly due east on the autumn equinox. On the summer solstice, the sun rises in the northern hemisphere north of east and south of east on the winter solstice. The key moment for the ancients was the equinox. It was considered to define the character of the year. And what defined it was the constellation that housed the sun, that was the house of the sun.
Okay, so the star pattern.
Yeah,
Right.
a zodiacal constellation. The constellations of the zodiac lie along what is called the ecliptic, the path of the sun.
Okay.
Okay, the Earth, the moon, we're all on the ecliptic within a few degrees above or below it. And therefore, these are constellations that we can see the sun against the background of. Constellation like Orion, you'll never see the sun against the background of it. You're only going to see it against the background of the zodiacal constellations that lie on the so-called path of the sun. And those are the 12 familiar constellations of the zodiac. And as I say, we're living in the age of Pisces right now. And according to ancient astrology, we're going to be making the transition into Aquarius within about the next 150 years. The sun will have left Pisces and will be rising in Aquarius. So actually the song is true. We do live in the dawning of the age of Aquarius. The only question is whether that means anything or not. The ancients thought it did. We think it doesn't. I'm not sure who's right.
So I'm going to repeat this back to you to check if I've got it correctly, but I suspect I might not have. Within the design of the pyramids, there was a number, which you said was 43,200.
It's a scale.
It's a scale.
It's a scale that's used for the height and the base perimeter of the Great Pyramid. Base perimeter, measure 4 sides, add it together, height, the actual height of the Great Pyramid. Its true original height, it lost about 30 feet in an earthquake in 1301, but you can calculate the true original height from the angle of the of the sides.
Ah, yeah, right.
And when you take that height and multiply it by 43,200, you get the polar radius of the Earth.
You get the radius of the Earth.
That's from the center of the Earth to the edge of the Earth. It's not the diameter of the Earth. The diameter is twice the radius.
Mm-hmm.
It's the polar radius.
Okay.
A key dimension of the Earth. Measure the sides, and you get, on the same scale, 1 to 43,200, you get the equatorial circumference of the Earth, what the Earth measures at its equator, its largest measure. And that is either a coincidence or it's deliberate. And because of the number chosen, and because that number is all over ancient mythology, I think it's deliberate.
That means that they must have known the circumference of the Earth?
Yeah. It means that they knew the circumference of the Earth, and it means they chose a place to put the Great Pyramid, which also was relevant. This isn't latitude 23 or latitude 37. This is just a fraction off latitude 30 degrees north, so therefore 1/3 of the way between the equator and the North Pole. It's a significant relevance. What it's telling us is this monument speaks to the Earth. This monument is locked into the true north of this planet. This monument gives you the dimensions of this planet. This monument is speaking to this planet.
How could they possibly know the circumference of the Earth 4,500 years ago?
Because they're a lost civilization. Because the knowledge comes down from a former time. I don't think the Egyptians knew it. I think it came down. I think it was inherited knowledge from what I'm here to advocate for and to speak for, the possibility of a major forgotten episode in the human story.
Which could be 20,000 years ago.
Yes.
And they've passed it down in myths and stories.
Yes, passed it down, but not only in myths and stories. This is something else that I'll just hint at here, that I intend to get into in the new book, is that there appear to have been organizations in each of these civilizations. In Egypt, they were called the followers of Horus. In Sumer, they were called the Apkallu. They served as advisors to kings. They were called sages. There's a reference to them. Many cultures refer to them as the 7 sages. They provided advice to kings in the historical period. And I'm wondering whether we're looking at some kind of long-lived organization here, which is carrying down information, looking for the right time to switch the engine of civilization back on again. I know it sounds extreme, but that's what I do. I explore extreme ideas and see whether they fit or not. And I'm beginning to find this idea does fit. It fits with a whole range of information, which will be in the next book.
A sage that reports to the king and
not only reports to the king, that advises the king.
On what?
On everything, on what to do.
Okay.
Yeah. The Apkallu, in the ancient traditions of Sumer, they existed in the pre-Diluvian world. They were there in the world before the flood. Then and they taught mankind knowledge then. But the flood came, the cataclysm came, they were wiped out. But some of the Apkallu survived, and they appear after the flood as advisors to the earliest historical kings of Sumer. And I'm just wondering whether, there are religions in the world which have maintained traditions and maintained offices, priesthoods, for example, for thousands of years. I don't see why the same shouldn't be true here, why there shouldn't have been some driving motive at the end of the Ice Age to preserve in a way what they knew and to find mechanisms to pass it down. One mechanism is to embed it in wonderful stories that will go on being told. And another mechanism is to set up some kind of secret society which is operating behind the scenes to guide and steer society. I'm not going to present the evidence for that here, but it's an avenue I'm pursuing. If I don't find it a satisfactory avenue, I'll abandon it. But at the moment, it's looking very interesting.
Then where did all this information go? Because if the people who built the pyramids of Giza had this information, where did the sages go and with their information?
Yeah, it's very odd actually. What happens after Giza is fascinating, because once you leave the 4th dynasty period, you get into the 5th and 6th dynasties, pyramid building collapses. The stuff they're making in the 5th dynasty, like the Pyramid of Unas, 5th dynasty pyramid in Saqqara, inside It's stunningly beautiful. Beautiful tomb chamber, stars on the ceiling, incredible hieroglyphs on the side. It's magical. But outside, it's just a pile of dust. It's a mess. It doesn't even, you could hardly recognize it as a pyramid. And it's true of all those. So this is odd in itself. Normally, when human cultures create something, they continue to work on it, and it tends to get better and better, not worse and worse. So it's odd what happens to the pyramids, that they get worse and worse in Egypt. It's like, job done that, move on. And that's there. And that's going to speak to human beings, not just for a generation, not just for 100 years. It's going to be there speaking to us for thousands of years. It's going to be sitting there on the Giza plateau like an enormous question mark, calling towards it those who don't see it just as a heap of stones, but actually see it as something wonderful and magnificent and mysterious, calling them to it and saying, learn about me, figure me out. And in the process of learning about me, you're going to learn so much else. Well, in learning about the Great Pyramid, I find that it is encoded with astronomical information that should not be there if the current model of the history of science is correct. I think the current model of the history of science is wrong. I think this information was known much earlier, and it's encoded in the Great Pyramid. Once I know that, then I have to start thinking, what else does that mean? And what else it means to me is a big forgotten episode in our story.
Again, why? Because they had intelligence that they're not credited with having at that time.
Yes, because it's there. Because there should not be a monument of this scale which incorporates into it information that was not supposed to be available to human beings for another 2,500 years.
So they must have got it from somewhere.
Yes, they must have got it from somewhere. And the fact that it's there is just a fact. All that's left for us to say is either it's a coincidence, complete coincidence, or it's the result of a deliberate decision. And if it's the result of a deliberate decision, that weighs much more towards a deliberate decision because of the scale chosen, because the scale is part of a system that is found all over the ancient world. It's not a random number. It's a very specific number. And it's a number that is derived from a motion of the Earth itself, from the precession of the Earth's axis. It is derived from that. So I'm situated at a significant latitude, I'm oriented to true north, and I incorporate the measurements of your planet on a scale derived from your planet itself. That's what the Great Pyramid is saying to us. And it's saying, figure that out.
Do you think there's something underneath it?
Oh, there's definitely something underneath it.
Because we think of it as a sort of like building with tunnels inside it. But
yeah, when you go into the Great Pyramid now, you go in through what is called the Robber's Tunnel or Mamun's Hole. The Caliph al-Mamun had a notion that there would be an entrance to the Great Pyramid in its northern face. Other pyramids had been found with entrances in their northern face. But at that time, the Great Pyramid was completely covered with perfectly smooth limestone facing stones, and nobody could see the entrance. They came off later in that earthquake in 1301. But when he broke in the 9th century, they didn't know where the door was. Apparently, there was a place you could almost literally press a switch and open that door, but they couldn't find it. So they broke in with sledgehammers and chisels, and they smashed their way into the Great Pyramid. And then at a certain moment, when they're about 60 or 70 feet into the Great Pyramid, they hear something dropping in a hollow space. A big something has fallen in a hollow space. They head towards that sound. And then they enter the original corridor system of the Great Pyramid. And that's the way we all go in now. We go in through that Robber's Tunnel, and then we go up the Grand Gallery, but we can also go down. We can go down to the subterranean chamber, which is 100 feet vertically beneath the base of the Great Pyramid, deep in the bedrock. I actually think that was the original sacred site on that monument, is that subterranean chamber. I don't advise anybody with claustrophobia to go down there. You're very conscious that you've got a 6 million ton monument sitting right above you in a place that has earthquakes. It can be quite oppressive, but that's just a hint of what's under the Giza plateau. That's an accessible bit, but it's already obvious that there is so much more. Some of it's been picked up with ground penetrating radar, and I'll take this opportunity to say that the hysterical reaction of mainstream scientists to the announcement by Filippo Biondi.
What is he saying?
He's saying that there are enormous structures under the second pyramid, not the Great Pyramid, under the pyramid attributed to Khafre, Khufu's successor, the structures that go hundreds of feet deep under there, structures that involve spiral kind of stairways, the reaction has been overwhelmingly dismissing this. Archaeologists they won't look further. They say it's impossible and they won't look at it. And I think that's shameful for people who imagine they're scientists. They should be looking further. I'd like to see the technology trialed in Turkey. There are underground cities in Turkey, Kaymakli, for example. We know every room in those underground cities. Run this technology on them. If they accurately reproduce what we already know is there, then we can be pretty sure they're accurately reproducing what's under the Giza pyramids. We need to do a lot more work before dismissing this. So I remain open to the notion that a huge underworld awaits discovery under Giza, and the ancient Egyptians themselves felt that way. They felt that Giza, the ancient name for it was Rostau. It was an entrance to the underworld. They saw it as an entrance to the afterlife realm. It makes sense that there would be much underground structures there.
And you've been alone in the pyramids?
Being with large groups in the pyramid is difficult, in the sense that the pyramid to me feels like a personality. When I'm in there with a large group, I feel the pyramid withdrawing. It's like it doesn't want to speak to you anymore. The place becomes a dead space. But if you can be in there with a very small group or be there alone and just be still, let the silence descend, sit in that silence, in the very low lighting that's in there. Just pause and remind yourself that you're in the last surviving wonder of the ancient world. And it's an incredible privilege to be there. And just let it speak to you. And it does. This is, of course, my critics will say another proof that Hancock's a lunatic, but I'm just telling you what happens to me. I think it's a monument that communicates.
What did it say to you?
It said to me, go further. Very much so. I feel, in a weird way, validated by the Great Pyramid. I think it's not only me, others as well, who've devoted big chunks of their lives to the Great Pyramid, like Robert Bauval, who is a great man, by the way. The Orion correlation, the recognition that the three pyramids on the ground are laid out in the pattern of the belt stars of the constellation of Orion, makes radical and important changes to our understanding of ancient Egypt. Again, that's another thing that's been leapt upon by the archaeological mafia because they want to destroy every new idea rather than spend a bit of time thinking about it.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favour. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.